Hi, this is Carrie Hummingbird, and this is Soul Nectar, that show that explores the undescribable, the unknowable, that which is bigger than us, connection to our essence, to spirit, to our higher selves, to whatever your concept of that is. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. So isn't that going to be fun? So I want to introduce a wonderful, amazing person who I've had the pleasure of many hours of conversation with, Anastasia Netri. She is a transformational coach who doesn't sugarcoat spirituality and personal growth in fluffy new age cliches. I love that, Anastasia. Fabulous. Her first published book, Self-Realization for Regular People, was birthed from her own awakening experience in which she lost her, quote, false ego. Once she could see the truth, the words in this book exploded from her. Her flagship product is the Core Genius Map, the foundation of her coaching services. She is also the founder of the Self-Realization Collective, a membership group with teachings, practices, tools, and community support. Grounded in her keen knack for business, starting her first successful company at the age of 22, and lifted by her own journey towards self-realization, starting in her 40s, Anastasia is gifted at seeing her clients through the darkest pain and the brightest light, holding safe space for them to go deep and delivering measurable results in their personal and business lives. To know more about her, you can visit her website, anastasianetri.com, and that will be in your email. So you'll be able to click directly to go see her website. So, I like to start the program with that discussion, like a fun story, fun, interesting, profound, jaw-dropping, whatever you have, story of discovering your higher self, who you really are, not who you thought you were for a long time.
That is quite a story. I'll do my best to give you the good, juicy bullet points, because to give you the full story, this program would need to be go on for about 3 or 4 days. And we don't have that kind of time.
Yeah, we need some highlights.
So, it kind of started when I reached this pinnacle of success, this thing I had been working for so long, dreaming of for so long. And the very disappointing, jarring thing was that when I got everything that I wanted, nothing had changed inside. Like, I was still anxious, actually more anxious, still unhappy. And that kind of was like this, I had this, what I call the awakening before the awakening in 2014, where it was over this weekend. It was like I got, sort of punched in the face, like the punched in the face by spirit kind of thing, where the bottom line of that weekend was I had this, like, just be who you are and life will get a lot easier. And, it seems simple enough. And it wasn't. But, one of the things I observed, and now I sort of pass along to other people, is any kind of measurable awakening, transformation has 2 parts to it. And those 2 parts are discovery and destruction. Like, they both have to happen. You can't make any kind of transformation in your life without something falling down and discovering something new. And they're usually happening sort of simultaneously. So that's kind of the process that began for me, was in all this stuff that I had created, I created on top of a false ego, and I'll tell you about that in just a moment, started to crash down. And as things were crashing down, there was things that things that were emerging just naturally. It wasn't like, it's kind of like how I like to, the metaphor I like to use is, if we are sort of born with this, wonderful foundation of who we are in spirit and who we are in human, like as our human expression, And then we started getting imprinting and programming and conditioning, and it's like kind of throwing junk on top of that foundation. And so, you know, as you start to burn or lift out or move out the foundation, which is kind of the destruction process, it's not like you have to, like, the truth of who you are is just sort of there. It's just kind of been there the whole time. It's just under a pile of stuff. Right?
Yeah.
At least that's how I experienced it. And so, you know, I just one by one started letting things go, like letting my status go, my money go, the business I had go. And there was something really profound kind of guiding all that. It's not that I wasn't freaked out and scared a lot of the time, because I was, but there was something that was like, you know, this is what you're really wanting. This is what you're really wanting. This is what you're really wanting. Just hang in there, hang in there. And so I did. I just, you know, I burned it all to the ground, so to speak. And it felt good to do it. It felt like the right thing. And I didn't really know like what else, like what else to do until I finally just stopped everything. Because I had, during this process, sort of made these attempts at different kind of businesses and messages. And it was like I was just basically kept building on top of something that was burning down. So finally, a few months back, I just stopped everything. I stopped communicating. I just literally kind of went into my cave. And it was during that time that sort of these final stages, like I got very depressed for like weeks. I could just feel like the last of the, what I call the false ego motivation, just sort of circling the drain. Like I didn't know like I don't know why I should get out of bed. Like it was kind of like that. And the whole time it was happening, I was still like, just let it happen. Don't fight it. Let it happen. Don't fight it. You know, it's just the last of this stuff just circling the drain. Just lay here and it'll pass. And so, and then I just, and I want to make sure I say this right, because I think this is an important thing. This was after sort of years of chipping away brick by brick by brick by brick, you know, and it was just kind of one day. I don't even really remember the day. It was a very anticlimactic,
It
like,
usually is, right?
duh
Yeah.
moment. But it was just this, I can't really put it into words other than that. Like I can, how I define sort of ego is I say, well, there's the true ego, which is just your human identity, right? Like without lumping ego into this dirty word, it's like, you know, just your human identity, how you identify yourself. But there's a true version of that, which is just sort of these, like I like to call them a core genius, things that you were born with. And then there's the false ego, which is the identity that gets created on top of some version of I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, I'm unlovable, I'm unwanted. And your life begins one thing after another overcompensating. Like you can build an entire life that's not you on that. And a lot of people do. And so mine for me was unwanted. That was just my thing that ran through every decision, every thought, every relationship that I had ever had. And that bottom just fell out. Like I could just feel that it wasn't there anymore. And it was the most interesting thing, because I sat there for a few days just like, wow, this is really weird that I don't feel like I need anything. Like it was a feeling of completeness and that I had never felt. And it was odd. It was an odd feeling. It was something that I wasn't used to. And a lot of things just snapped into place. And, you know, within a couple of weeks of that, I was sitting at Starbucks one morning and I just started writing. And then I just kept writing and kept writing and kept writing. And then after a while, I was like, oh gosh, I guess I'm writing my book. And it was very effortless and easy. And you know, but it was just interesting how the minute because I couldn't share I couldn't share a message on top of I'm unwanted on this planet. Like it just, for me, it had to dissolve in order for me to even bother putting something out there. Because when you think you're not wanted,
Yeah.
you
What's
think,
the
no,
foundation
right?
of your
Yeah.
house?
So that was what happened. And it's, it's like I say, as far as stages of awakening, I'm definitely still in my stages, but this to me felt like I'd been living underwater my whole life and I just walked up on land. So there's this whole new world to explore and all these new levels of awakening and self-realization. But I felt like this sort of big thing happened, and that space put me in a place of feeling very complete and um, yeah, just I guess very contented is the only word I can come up with. But there's still, plenty of motivation. Actually, there's the motivation that I feel now to get out and share things is coming from a really pure place, not from please see me, please validate my existence,
Mm.
please tell me I'm wanted. Like it just feels like something I want to do. So I feel like anything that happens over at this point is just kind of cool gravy, but it's weird because even further levels, I don't feel like I need them in the way that I needed this one. Like this one was the big one. So anyway, that's kind of my uh, story as it is today.
Well, that's great. I it is so hard to talk about, isn't it? Because I think the thing I liked about your story is the part that really resonates with me is that part of surrendering and letting go. In the shamanic sense, we call, going into the void. We're going into the east, and the east is all about new beginnings. And the sun rises in the morning, and you have no idea what's going to happen during the day, but you
Mm-hmm.
just have this sense like, okay, the sun just rose up, a new day started. It's all a mystery,
Mm-hmm.
but it's here, and the sun is shining, so we're warm, we're cared for. The only thing is we don't know what's going to happen today. So, but that can be you can allow that to be a good thing or a bad thing. And I think when you awaken, that awakening process helps you to let it be a good thing that you don't know what's going to happen
Well,
versus before when we're trying to control everything and make it happen a certain way.
well, let me put it this way because I love what you're saying. Let me put what you just said into this kind of different framework, which is kind of interesting. It's like taking away the sort of the good and the bad, the absolute truth and reality of life is that you don't know what's going to happen. Like, I mean, it's to me, I always settle in, I love reality. Reality is just how things are. So it's like trying to control everything is literally me living in some fantasy in which
Yes.
I'm trying to control. Like I can't. The only thing that is there is absolute truth to well, there's very few, I think, absolute truths, but I think this is one of them. There is always something changing. I mean, right now, since we've been talking, both of us have had thousands of cells in our body die and thousands of cells in our body be reborn. And there has been fluctuations in the wind and the weather and the seasons and our energy level and everything constantly changes. So I find great comfort in truth of just going, it's not so much whether I'm okay with it happening, or like that it's a good thing that it's happening or bad thing. It just is. It just does. It's like I never really know. And a lot of the stuff that's happened in my life in the past 3 years, Carrie, it's like I got everything I wanted, and nothing about the past 3 years is anything I would have asked for consciously. Nothing.
I can
Like,
resonate with that. Oh my
right.
God.
But
Yeah.
it does. So it's like this idea that I'm trying to control. First of all, just a total flat out lie. And there is just this understanding, not based on some faith or even a theory, but my own life experience says that there's something at work that is very mysterious, that is always giving me exactly what I want. And I have like rock solid evidence of that. Like, it's not just a belief at this point. It's just what I've noticed, So yes, so you're right. I think that, like, right now, if you're watching this, the awakening moment that you could have right now is, oh my God, I never know what's going to happen. Bam, truth bomb.
Yeah, that'll
And then you
set
can
you
just,
free.
yeah, exactly,
Just
exactly.
let it go. I love what you said about I got everything I wanted, but I didn't know how I wanted it to be. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't understand. I was not a soul guide. What is
Hmm.
that? I
Hmm.
I was an artist. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be a famous artist. And I was a tech writer to make my money to support my art habit. That's what
Hmm.
my life was.
Right.
And I was convinced like the pinnacle of my happiness was when I was going to be a successful professional artist.
Right.
And then this path came and I thought, well, actually that's who I am that. You know, I am this person that straddles the physical and the spiritual worlds.
Hmm.
I am that.
Hmm.
I've always done that. Like, I've always talked about things. I was thinking about it today. I've had so many relationships where people said, you always go so deep. Can you
Hmm.
just talk about the weather? I hate that. I can't actually. Like, that's like asking the ocean to be a little pond. I can't. Like, I got to go deep. I'm not happy if I'm not going deep.
Right.
So this perfect job for me because it's always deep.
You know what? It's funny because what you're describing, like, again, core core genius is just, again, it's like who you are, who you were sort of, the particular expression of spirit as a human, right? Whatever you want to call it. But when you feel like you not only, it's one thing to know it here, right? And it starts there. Like, it starts with a intellectual realization. I always say transformation, transformation is one of the things, but like real, we could call it awakening, change, whatever, has four distinct stages. And one is information, where you just become informed. Then there's realization, where you go, oh, ooh, ah, but
And
that
I
doesn't
love that.
necessarily, right? Realization is great. It doesn't always change anything, but it starts a change. And then this process is a little different for everybody, but what makes it go from here down to here into just an absolute knowing? Like, you can't, it's a shift in perception, as the Course in Miracles calls it. Like, it just fundamentally changes your relationship with everything. And then there's integration. Now, this is the tricky part. This is where, this new knowing, like, gets put into your life. And this is sometimes the destruction part. It's like, when you kind of know this about yourself, you got to, let go of the tech job, right? It's like actually
Yes.
integrating it and living it. And it's all of those stages can happen over a period of, months or years, depending on the deepness of where it goes. But there's a lot of people with stories like yours, which is, I thought I was this, and then this thing called to me, and then, it's like from that moment of I am this to when you're actually, doing your soul nectar show, and you know what I mean? That's the integration piece. So that's kind of how it happens.
It's so interesting I love how you broke it out that way. Because I think a lot of people play in the information and the realization space,
For years.
but they don't get to the integration.
Yes, yes. And it's, the thing is that, the transformation integration stage, that's usually when you have the most destruction, and that's hard. Anybody that's been through a real awakening in their life will tell you that there was sometimes a period of years where things were falling down. There's this song by Barry Manilow, this song, I Made It Through the Rain.
I know
I'm
that
like,
song.
there's something about that, like, I made it through, and I found myself respected by the others who went through it and made it. And I'm like, because anybody who's really gone through that destruction knows that none of us really approach it like, yay, my house is on fire. It's just, but you kind of accept that it's inevitable and it has to happen. But it is hard, and it takes an enormous amount of courage, and for a while it takes a lot of faith. I'm not a faith is one of those things that you don't know for sure, but you just kind of believe. At least that's how I define it. But it takes a lot of like faith to have some trust and to let it go, and that's difficult. It's almost impossible to do on your own, and I think that's what keeps people stuck in the information realization cycle, where, because it's like, if you're wanting things in your life to change without moving a piece of furniture, then you're kind of fucked, right?
Yeah,
It's
you
just
are.
like, you
It's not going
can't.
to move by itself. That's like the
Right.
mountaintop theory. Like if I realize it in my meditation and I breathe and I visualize it enough, it'll just happen. No,
Right. It's like you
you
have
got
to
to do
be.
something.
Well, and sometimes things can get like, I mean, this is sometimes big things. This is sometimes where, you know, marriages end,
Oh yeah.
livelihood comes to an end, friends, relationships, sometimes even families and locations where you've lived. I mean, this is the destruction process, is sometimes everything that that you're clinging to, you know like, again, it's not easy. And I have a lot of respect for how hard it is, because I've been through it. And I find that that's usually when you really do need some support. It's funny, on my website there's this page called 10 things, and it's just, I guess, my little version of a kind of a manifesto. And one of the things that I said is, like, when you're awakening, you really should only share your journey with people who are like on the same page, because everybody else will think you've lost your shit. It's like when you have a successful home and marriage, and you're making a lot of money, and you start to have that thing, and you're it's kind of like the Elizabeth Gilbert, like what happened with her. Like, her life looked fine on the outside, and she had her moment of, this isn't me, and then had to go through a destruction process that was frightening. And now was led into this place where she's got all this, she's an inspirer as a result of doing these things. But none of that was easy. None of
Well,
that was it all happened in these little stages.
I want to also say, like, for people, I've had this realization just in the last couple weeks, really.
Mm-hmm.
Making that step from realization to implementation to transformation to actually integrate the change
Mm-hmm.
requires a certain amount of selfishness. It requires
Total
this, like,
selfishness.
this is right for me and everybody else
Yes.
be damned. And,
Well, yes.
because you do have to do that, but but it doesn't last forever.
No,
You cycle back. So you get through you have to be selfish to take the step, because there's never take it otherwise.
absolutely.
And then you get, you do your work, you invest in yourself, and you get to the end of it where you've integrated everything and all the lessons from that experience. Now you can turn around from this really full place
Yeah.
and turn around. The proof is in the pudding. You can go back to your loved ones that maybe got a little squashed along the way of your
Casualties
transformation,
of war.
casualties
Yes.
of war, and come back
Yes.
to them with loving in your heart, and really just
Yeah.
go, I see it, and that really is the finale. It's probably one of the hardest parts of the journey for me so far, is
Yeah.
sitting in the pile of crap that I created for other
Oh,
people.
yes.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh, awful, right? Like sitting in that pile of
no
crap
fun.
I
Yeah.
just had that happen in this retreat I was in recently in the last couple of weeks, because a lot of stuff got, my dad died, as people are aware of, and
Yeah.
a lot of things got stirred up with my dad passing, and largely because he and I were really good. You know, we had resolved a lot of things because of the work I did. We were able to really, like, I have no regrets. Like, we are clean and clear. But because of it, some other people in my family, I'm having to, like, circle back and clean up even more, like clean and
Yeah.
clear even more, and because we're coming together for my dad,
Yeah.
and so there's some piles of poo poo that I'm having to face right now, which are uncomfortable. Eh, you know,
Yeah. Oh,
ah,
it's funny that you said
you
piles of
know,
poop because I actually I just wrote in my book, like, you know, this process of awakening is very much like, um, there's a difference between, and again, here's, I didn't make this disclaimer at the beginning. I'm going to make this disclaimer now. Everything out of my mouth and in my book is all based on my point of view, my experience. So just pay attention to what resonates. Don't worry about the rest. But this is sort of how, um, it's like when you, uh, a lot of spirituality, mainstream spirituality, to me is kind of like spraying air freshener when the problem is there's poo on under the rug, right?
yeah,
So it's like I'll just keep doing affirmations and meditating and doing yoga and doing all these things, hoping that I can find my bliss without looking at anything uncomfortable. And you know what, it's a knowable effort. I went through it. I think that everyone has to try that, right? Like, you really need to try to go from misery to bliss without being uncomfortable or looking at anything you don't want to see. You need to
it's
try
worth a
that.
try.
Well, and I think that you really can't do this awakening journey until you've tried that. Again, that's just my opinion. I'm sure there's cases of people doing, going and doing the deep work without trying a few quick fixes. Um, but when you get down to it, at some point, you have to lift the rug and you have to get your rag out and you have to deal with the fact that it's there and that you put it there and it stinks and it's not fun to look at. And there's another chapter in my book called The Power of Radical Honesty. And this is like, to me, this was me cleaning up that poo, is just going, you know, oh God, I was just telling somebody this yesterday. I said, what's so funny is I used to be so visible about people who were like phony and had no integrity. And it's just like, I look back now and I was like the phoniest ever. And I had no idea. Like, I really thought I was the one who was on the up and up, and it was everybody else who was full of crap. And that was not fun to see. That was not fun to see at all. That I put out a lot of stuff. I hurt a lot of people. Um, I manipulated people in order to get things I wanted. Like, I made people feel guilty and I took power. I gave away power. I took power. I did all of that stuff. And that was a big part of this journey, was like getting real with myself about all that and having the initial sting of shame, big shame that comes up when you actually see it. But one thing I will tell you, because I know there's listeners out there who know what I'm talking about, are going through it right now, it does pass. Like, so many people avoid that initial sting of shame, and I get it. It's not fun and it's really hard. And sometimes you need someone to sit with you while you face something. I think you're very lucky in life if you have one or two people that you can, let into your shame spiral, right? And just go, oh God, I literally just did this thing, or I just am seeing this thing I did, and I accused somebody of this, and I totally was and, but it's so cleansing. And right on the other side of that sting of shame if you can just sit with it, is a feeling of feeling clean and liberated. It's so worth it. It's
It's so
just
worthwhile
so
to name the elephant in the
worth
room.
it.
I mean,
Oh, yes.
my
Because
son,
then
okay,
you clean and you don't have to spray
yeah.
air freshener and keep efforting and
Well, and
efforting.
it affects your relationships. I
Yes.
realized on this retreat that I was on, because I had a lot of time for introspection, I realized that I'd been somewhat annoyed or feeling bad or awkward around my younger son.
Mhm.
And I was like, what is this about? Like, oh, I don't like his hair. I want him to look different. It's bothering me at some deep fundamental level, and I don't know why. And he's 15. So, there's that. He's a teenager. But the
That's
thing
enough right
is,
there.
right there is enough. But the thing was, I realized on retreat, because I had enough quiet space in my brain, I was able to really see it was because I knew at some level that he had taken on a lot of shame from me and my divorce, that he was in third grade when that happened. So he was just a little guy. He was so heartbroken that I left his dad. And then he not only took my stuff, but he watched me suffer and struggle and all this through all this dating stuff that I was doing. I was just completely out of control.
Right.
And then my ex-husband also, because he was feeling insecure and bad about himself, and my little sweetheart was going back and forth between the homes. And he was just like a little sponge, just like
Yep.
sucking up all this stuff that had nothing to do with him. And
Mhm.
I knew at some level that he had done that, and I was feeling guilty for it.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I wasn't. It was poo under the rug. I was like, "Oh, it smells. Oh, just spray. Come here, honey, give
Right.
me a hug. Like give me hugs. I love you. Give me hugs."
Right.
Really, what needed to happen, and this is what ended up happening after the retreat, is because during the retreat, I actually confronted his higher self, and I said, "Just give it to me." And he did. It's like this torrent of anger. He just.
Yeah. Wow.
And so after, I was
That's
like,
hard.
"Hey, Tanner, it's okay if you're angry with me.
Yeah.
I'm I'm
Wow.
fine with that, and you don't have to receive my love.
Right.
It's right here for you whenever you're ready,
Right.
and you can be as angry at me as long as you want, and
Mhm.
it's okay."
Wow.
And he didn't say a word. He didn't speak, but I could feel it. It was like it shifted things
Oh, yeah.
because I named it. You're angry at me for leaving
Yes.
your dad.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That good for you.
I
I
know,
mean,
right?
this is actually one of the things that I write a lot of stuff about parenting in my book, and I'm not a parent. It's coming from just observing lots of things, and a lot of it's coming from the perspective of being parented, right? So, but I will tell you, there's something really. It's very hard. I watch a lot of parents facing so much. Um, Pressure from each other and it's really hard to I feel like one of the things all parents have in common is there's this deep fear of just screwing your kids up. Like
Totally.
every parent has that, right?
Yeah.
And because the fear is so deep, then it becomes this uh thing of overcompensating all the time and trying to be like, no, I'm a good parent and this and this and this, because the fear of like, oh my God, what if I suck at this? Like is sort of always there. And then there becomes all this projection that parents put on each other. And I will tell you, being able to own up with your kids and acknowledge things and acknowledge that they, have been hurt, but it's like, you did good by not staying in the marriage, but there is something that happens and kids have to deal with that, and just giving them permission to have their feelings, giving yourself a minute to go, you know what, this is not about me being a good parent. This is just about acknowledging what happened here, and the fact that like everybody needs a grieving process. Everybody needs to get angry. Everybody needs to have their moments. And if it's coming at me, I need to make that okay. And it's very brave.
Well,
very hard to
because,
do. And I just want to acknowledge you
well,
for
thank you. Because
that's when shit gets real. Okay.
it is real, and the
Yes.
thing is that they, I've realized I realized I was enforcing
Mm-hmm.
the image of perfection in my
Mm-hmm.
family.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm
Mm-hmm.
such a wonderful, loving person, you can't possibly ever be angry with me.
Right.
It's you don't have
Oh.
permission because look how freaking perfect. I'm Carrie Hummingbird. You you can't ever be upset with me.
Right.
And I realized that how unfair that was.
Oh, honey, that I
So
just
unfair.
I have gobs of respect for that. You because again, I know that it is much easier said than done. Like doing it, it's like, you do kind of feel that like, oh, but you know, truth is
Yeah.
to me the only thing that sets you free,
Mm.
really sets you free, free. And, you know, it's, we have collectively just way over identified with just so many lies about the world we live in, about our relationships with each other, about an idea about who we are and what's right and what's wrong and what we should do and what we shouldn't do. And like we're full of all these ideas that upon examination just kind of fall apart. I'm not like my approach to self-realization is one of just looking at things square in the face, because I say, it's kind of like quantum physics. When you zoom in close enough, you see that it doesn't have any substance to it. Nothing has any substance to it. Everything is, the whole universe and space and this watch and my body and everything, you put them under a microscope to its smallest element and you see that it's 99.9% empty space. It's the same with ideas and beliefs and all these things. It's like, if you look at them, that's what I mean about it dissolving. It just that you look at it closely enough and it can't hold any water. And when things like that just start to dissolve on their own, underneath it is just this truth that can find its way in. And oh, it's a much more wonderful place to be. But sifting through the years of bullshit,
Well,
it's
and
hard.
and
To
I
do.
think it's people get really tempted to get defensive with this kind of stuff. Like, I years ago, a less skilled person that I would have been like, "You can't say that about me. I did the best I could,"
Right, right, right,
and secretly agreeing with him. Like what a
right,
jerk I was, right?
right.
But to say it out loud, and I think,
It's liberating.
and not in a place of like. The other thing is, I think a lot of, especially women, I feel like a lot of women um, will take their own power away. And
Mm-hmm.
so the way I did it was not in taking my own power away, because I did the thing I needed to do. And there was no doubt in me that that was the right thing to do, because everything in my life is it's just like confirmation, confirmation, confirmation. I did the right thing. But it's also true that I love my family and that there were some things that I needed to clean up, and one of those
Yeah,
things was what we were talking about, and just letting them have their perspective, letting that
right,
shine. It's like, let's hear it, just like vomit
right.
all over me all your stuff, and I'll
Let
just clean it up.
let's
It's okay.
Yes, yes. And cleaning up,
I mean,
sorry, cleaning up stuff is just one of those things that it just feels good to do. And what I've noticed that happens is the more that you go back and clean up some of those messes and confront them and look at them and deal with them and forgive yourself and all those kinds of things, the less you continue to make those messes. The more on the up and up you are right from the get-go. But it sometimes it takes looking back at it's kind of like, what's the anatomy of this mess? What's it made of? Why, how did I get here? And the closer you look and the more that you can see, why you made the mess in the first place and what was going on, and clean it up, and have those moments of awakening, the more aware you are. And so you go into the situations in life from then on, and you don't continue to make them. So it's a brilliant thing. And yeah, we've all had to do it. Like, I've been there. So, and lots and lots of messes. I made
Lots of
many of
messes.
them. Yes.
But
So good for you.
on the other side of this is just like more connection,
Yes,
truth
intimacy.
creates
Intimacy.
intimacy.
Yes.
Even if it's hard, it creates intimacy.
Yes. Yes. Brilliant.
Well, this has been a fascinating, wonderful conversation. I could go on with you forever, and I'm going to have you back on the show because I love talking with you.
Oh,
Um,
yes. Many more things to discuss.
so now I know that you launched your book, and so tell everyone the title and how they can get a copy and.
Okay. So the title is Self-Realization for Regular People. No chanting, yoga pants, or hard drugs required.
I love that.
And you can get it on Amazon. Actually, if you just go to Amazon and you type in self-realization or Anastasia Netri, my book will come up pretty easy. You can also go to my website. It's there as well, which is anastasianetri.com.
Awesome.
Thank you,
And
Kay.
yes, thank you so much. So you guys, you'll be seeing her again because, we've we have this easy going. I don't know if you guys noticed, but we like each other. So we're
Very
gonna,
much.
yeah, yeah. All right. So good. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. And I'd like to give everybody kisses at the end. So here they come,
Okay.
everybody.
Mwah.
Spreading joy. Okay, love you guys. See you next week. Bye.